Welcome to Proles of the Round Table.
Hello, and welcome to Proles of the Round Table, where we sit down, have a few drinks, and talk leftist history. Check out our website at prolespod.com, where you can find our back catalog, links to all the resources we talk about, and a whole communist ebook library, which does include several recipes at this point. If you want to support us even more, check out our Patreon, where you can give your hard-earned wages to an authoritarian communist podcast in exchange for bonus episodes, clothes, and show appearances. Mugs.
Small onesies.
Small onesies, yeah, for your babies. Find out more at patreon.com/prolespod. We wanted to thank this episode's primary sponsor, who enabled us to buy this fancy round table. So big thanks to our sponsor, Radio Free Asia. It's a
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, yes. Just a quality news source. So today we have with us...
we should have shouted out Park Young Mi, who offered to buy us...
This is Charlesworth.
offered to buy us all tickets to the DPRK.
Still waiting. The PayPal is on the website.
Did she really?
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, she legitimately
did. But then we were like, do it. And then
Do it.
silence.
No
Do it,
response.
you coward.
Do it, coward.
Come
Yeah.
on.
Okay. So today we have with us our friend and yours, comrade, rapper, Xiangyu, who's calling in from, where are you located right now without doxing yourself?
Taiwan.
Okay, yeah. So what time is it there?
It's 8 a.m.
Okay, cool. Just starting the day off right with some proles. Yeah, introduce yourself. Like where can people find you online? Like what's your thing?
I guess you can find me on Twitter at Comrade Xiangyu, which is COMRADEXIANGYU. That's where I post my stuff in English. Everything else is in Chinese. But if you go there and you want to find other stuff, I guess there are links. So yeah, it's probably the easiest way.
Cool. All right, and then so today this is the first time we've had more than 3 proles at the table for a long time because life is wild. And so just starting around the table, who do we have here?
This is Justin, and tonight I am drinking Shit Talking Sour IPA from Station 26 in New Image Brewing.
Hey, this is Alex, and tonight all I have are my bourgeoisie tears.
That's all you need.
And, because we're discussing, the DPRK again, I went with a traditional Korean beer, Labatt Blue.
That's from Bad Korea.
It's not from Korea at all. I'm just going to keep using this joke every time I have Labatt Blue.
Why not?
It's a Canadian beer. It's good.
That is bad Korea.
It is Bad Korea.
Canadian. And then I'm Ethan, back at the table after all this time.
Missed you, baby.
What?
Missed you, baby.
Missed you too. And I'm drinking a Sapporo, which is a premium beer from Canada as well. So
Wow.
Sapporo is
Bad choice for the episode.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. There's no. It's brewed and bottled in Guelph, Ontario.
Really?
Yeah.
Sapporo is brewed in Ontario. That's wild.
Yeah. It's a Canadian beer. So fucked up. All right. Cool. So why did we bring him on? I have to find my list of I have to find my list of questions. Recently you got back from a trip to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cool. No, like, what was your occasion for going there? Like, just kind of tell us a little bit of the backstory of your trip.
The most recent one or the one from last year? Because I can kind of roll the two answers into one.
Yeah, do both.
So I guess to really answer this question, I'd have to go a little bit into my personal history, if you guys don't mind.
Perfect, please.
So, I mean, my views on the DPRK have changed immensely from the days when I was a filthy liberal. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to catch a glimpse. Wait, sorry?
Said big same.
Oh, yeah. And I just really wanted to see what things were like over there, and more importantly, to have real interactions with the Korean people. And I don't really talk about like my personal stuff too often online, but some of you guys might know, some maybe not, most maybe not. My dad was born and raised in South Korea as a part of the Chinese diaspora there. So like growing up, I always heard about Korea. And I remember when I was playing around with the globe as a kindergartner, I asked him, hey, so are you from North Korea or South Korea? And then that's around the time when I realized that there are complications beyond my comprehension going on in Korea. Mm. So, and like growing up in the imperialist center, you hear about the DPRK every now and then being demonized, like nukes here, people being fed to dogs there, scary leader personally offing someone by means of anti-aircraft gun,
right?
Threatening to kill people who don't produce 100 kilos of shit per day,
right?
The list goes on. And the moment I started taking time to understand the DPRK was in 2011 when General Kim Jong-il passed away. I saw the videos of the people crying, and my 18-year-old liberal self thought, wow, these people are very brainwashed. They know nothing about the outside world and literally believe that their dictator is a god. And little did I know the mass crying is a Korean thing that was also done in the South until quite recently.
Yeah.
So then around that time, I picked up a book, not recommended. It's called Nothing to Envy. And that furthered my interest in the country. And even though it's nothing but like a CIA propaganda piece pretty much, it says stuff like little girls aren't allowed to ride bikes for some reason. It doesn't really say why. And it was around that time I started reading up on U.S. imperialism and the atrocities it's committed all over the world. And I realized, wow, the DPRK is actually right about U.S. imperialism.
Right.
And another thing that seemed obvious to me was that the nuclear program was a deterrent, and that the narrative about the DPRK being an existential threat to America was quite ridiculous. I mean, I've always been the kind of guy to kind of support the underdog. Anyways, fast forward to a few years later when I started studying communism, and I guess you guys have been through this. One of the major hurdles you come across during this process, as you know, is thinking, if this stuff is so great, then how come like North Korea has its problems? Mm-hmm. And then when you ask this question, you have to really look at things in context. And the more you study them, the more you respect their struggle against U.S. imperialism, and you gain a better understanding of their positives as well as, some of their shortcomings. And another reason why I went to the DPRK was because, like I mentioned, my dad was part of the Chinese diaspora in Korea, and his father was a migrant worker who left his native Shandong province and went to China's northeast when it was occupied by Japan. And eventually he and his brother made it to Korea, I believe, in the 1930s. So for a while, my grandfather and his brother both lived in Hwacheon, which is in the northern half of the peninsula. Then eventually my grandfather made his way to Seoul, or Gyeongsang as it was called, Kejo in Japanese. Mm. And then after liberation, the peninsula was, partitioned. My grandfather lost all contact with his brother. And then like 6 years ago, I met my cousin from that part of the family for the first time. And that's when I realized how lucky I was, because most people whose families were separated by the Korean War never get to meet their relatives who were on the other side. Yeah. And Hwacheon, like all other cities in the north, was bombed. My great uncle's family went and hid in a valley or a ravine. So one day they were found by the Chinese People's Volunteer Army, and who told them to get out of Korea and get back to safety in China. So they ended up settling in Shenyang. So knowing that a significant part of my family's history has to do with what's gone on in the Korean peninsula probably played another role in me wanting to go see the North.
Yeah, for sure.
Plus, South Korea is boring.
I don't know. My brother and I had air pellet battles in the streets of Songtan. So that was pretty exciting, but
yeah, it was fun.
That's the coolest thing going on.
That was the coolest thing going on.
My brother, I'm sure it is not interesting. My brother's right there now teaching English, and I'm sure there are a lot of weird white men like him doing that. So
some, I suppose, are good people.
I suppose.
Yeah, they're not sending our best.
Yeah. Love you, bro. All right. So, okay, cool. So which parts of the country did you visit? I guess on both of your visits.
Well, my second visit was pretty easy. I just went to Rason, which is a special economic zone, which is a combination of both Rajin and Sonbong. On my first trip, it was a little bit more diverse. I made stops in Siniju, Kaesong, and I spent time in Pyongyang, Hamhung, and Wonsan.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think when most people think of like, oh, visiting the DPRK, they think of Pyongyang mostly, but like what, and like that's obviously a large metropolitan area. Like what kind of places are these other areas you visited? Like, is it rural, like medium-sized towns, more big cities? What?
They weren't like big cities like we would imagine. Like they were not at the same scale as Pyongyang, but they weren't like really small rural areas either. We stopped in some rural areas on our way to and from places, and we visited a collective farm.
Nice.
But other than that, it's just I mean, try to imagine what I guess if you've seen pictures of Seoul from a few decades ago, looks a little bit like it, but a lot cleaner and
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So this is sort of an open-ended question, I guess, but so since you've been there a few times at this point, what are the main things that you would want people who haven't visited the DPRK to know?
I guess this is kind of obvious, but the people in Korea have individual personalities, goals, aspirations, ideas.
Oh, shit.
And yeah, amazing, right? And after interacting with all sorts of people there, I can safely say that the Korean people know much more about the world outside of Korea than most of us know about the DPRK.
No shit.
I think it's important to keep in mind that their culture is very socially conservative, so you should probably go in with an open mind and understand why they're reluctant to blindly follow, new developments abroad in terms of things like relationships or just things that are foreign to their culture. I think we should be confident that the people there will figure things out and improve their society like their own way as time progresses. And another thing is the people there really do love their leaders, and they are very grateful for the socialist system, which they like to refer to as people first socialism. They're really proud and thankful of their free housing, education, and healthcare, and it's okay to talk about the problems they face, like believe it or not. And I mean, my guide in Rason did talk a little bit about the arduous march. But if you go in there like mocking their system and their leaders, like that one guy on YouTube, I forgot his name. His last name was Zeng. He was like a Chinese American. Yeah, he was a dick. But if you're like him and you go in and you kind of like talk to them, like talk down to them in a way that's like really disrespectful and mocking, they won't take too kindly to you, and they probably won't really engage much.
Well, sure. I mean, who would?
Nah, yeah.
Yeah, nobody would. If some asshole comes up and is like talking shit about the place you live and your people, yeah, of course not. Like,
Unless people come to America talking shit about America. In this case.
well, yeah,
It depends on the person.
We'll tap him on the back and be like, "You're with us."
See, the difference is in the DPRK, you do that. You just they'll just be like, yeah, what an asshole. In the US, if you do it to the wrong person, you'll probably get shot.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That is true. You'll at least get the shit beat out of you. Yeah, no, that's. So the people that you were talking to, so I apologize. A lot of these questions sound like really kind of like, I don't like basic, but I think a lot.
They're the questions that most people are going to want to ask.
And that's why I'm asking them. So like the people you talked to, what was their attitude towards their government and like their system? You kind of mentioned this a second ago, but.
Pretty positive. I mean, one of my tour guides from the first trip, Xiangyu, he introduced himself as Che, as in Che Guevara.
Nice.
He's a huge fan of the party and, the three leaders. And on the night we got to Pyongyang after dinner, when we were like walking and talking on Yongmyung Street, which is one of the newest districts in Pyongyang, I talked to him about how I saw videos of Kim Jong-un inspecting some of the apartment units, and he responded by saying, "Oh yes, he came not only after construction but also when they were being built. It was very dangerous, but he still demanded to see the construction." And he was very excited to attend the mass games on National Day with Kim Jong-un in attendance. And I think he's a huge fan because he was born in the early 1980s, and he has memories of the country before the fall of the Soviet Union. And then he's been through the arduous march during which the party and the people under the guidance of Kim Jong-il managed to hold the country together. And now he's seeing all the changes and developments that are happening. So, but on the other hand, my other guide was an intern who graduated just last month, actually. And she's the daughter of a professor or professors. I'm not sure what her dad does. I know her mom's an English professor. And apparently she comes from one of the nice districts really nice districts in Pyongyang. And when we asked her if she was excited to see Kim Jong-un in person, she just kind of shrugged and was like, I see him on TV every day. I mean, I understand where she's coming from because with the sanctions, I mean, to be honest, their society leaves a lot of room for many material desires.
Sure.
Like once your basic needs are met. So, I mean, I can kind of understand her indifference. And with people like her, I mean, she's young. She's only lived in the DPRK. I think it's really difficult to understand how shitty being poor in a capitalist country is.
Yeah.
I mean, she grew up in a country where there's no homelessness. And even if you're from a less developed area with, more problems, you still have a place to live. You have schools to attend. You don't have to worry about, losing your house because of an illness or having no access to decent education.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you start to take that stuff for granted.
So. It's kind of like the people in the socialist bloc in Eastern Europe when
yes, yeah,
when their systems were being overthrown, they thought, well, capitalism, we have all the skills we need, we can get rich or die trying. They kind of thought that they would keep all of their socialist benefits,
right?
Yeah.
I mean that happens a lot with socialist states that end up moving to a different system, like having their systems collapse. Like, I mean, Jeremy and I, when we talked about the GDR a couple episodes ago, that was exactly what happened. A lot of the people in East Germany who were voting for unification, they thought they were going to keep the benefits, like the social benefits, but that they would also get some more like consumer goods and that sort of thing. But like, yeah, and so I
can't have it both ways, homie.
Surprise.
Which sucks, but like that's the world we live in, and so it's really tough. I mean, you have to understand where people are coming from and why people think the way they do, but like it sucks.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I mean, it sounds like there was some
differences in opinions.
Yeah, slight differences in opinion. I mean, I imagine because you had your handlers there, they weren't allowed to say anything, right?
They had a gun to
here's
their
the
head.
thing. There were a lot of there were some. I mean, obviously, most people on my tour group were liberals.
Yeah.
And on day one, there was this one person in my group who got into a debate. Like on the first fucking night, he got into a debate with one of our minders, handlers, because we were talking about housing. And my guide was saying, yeah, he has a house, and if he one day decides to have like more children and his house becomes too small, he'll get a new house that's bigger and more accommodating. And then the guy was just like, well, can you sell your house? And he's like, no, why would I sell my house? And he's like, well, if you can't sell your house, then you don't own it.
Oh my
God. So then like it got kind of awkward. So then I just kind of butted in and I was like, well, is your toothbrush yours? He's like, yeah. Well, can you sell your toothbrush? And he was like, no. I was like, is your toothbrush yours?
Yeah.
Nice.
Communists coming for those toothbrushes.
Yeah, I was going to say, you used the old toothbrush argument. Nice.
Yeah.
Classic.
In a different way.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
You're flipping it on its head like Marx did to Hegel.
Stylectics.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you guys want to hear another funny anecdote about their leaders, there was a funny conversation I had. So I was at a bar once, and all the one of the bartenders spoke Chinese, but none of them spoke English. So I just became the translator for some people in my group. And then so they were just asking questions like, oh, what about this and that? And then the question about whether Kim Jong-un spoke English was brought up. So then I asked. And then when I asked, she was like, well, how the fuck am I supposed to know? So then I was like, well, I know. I was like, I saw the video of him with Donald Trump, walking down that little path, and they were talking and, interacting with one another, and there were no translators. So I was like, he probably speaks some English, right? And then she didn't know how to answer. So then she just kind of looked at her coworkers awkwardly. And then 10 seconds later, she was like, our dear respected supreme leader comrade is good at everything he does.
Man.
Nice. That, but unironically.
Yeah, definitely.
He probably speaks better English than Trump does. I mean, if we're being real.
Didn't he like he was educated in the West in like he went to school in was it Switzerland at like an international school.
Oh really? I didn't
think
know
so.
that.
Yeah.
I heard he has some skills, but he's not like he's not too fluent
Sure.
in English.
That's possible.
He might be better at like German or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
I saw it was wild. There's like a picture of him in like 1997 or something with all of his classmates.
Well, when he's like 20.
When he's well, it would have been earlier than that because he was
Or
a
like
teenager. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like with all of his classmates in this Swiss school. I think it was Switzerland. Anyway, so it's like a bunch of white people and then Kim Jong Un is like, smiling with a thumbs up or whatever. Like, this is weird.
It's wild, like how young he is, though.
He is very young. Yeah,
That's true. The boy leader.
People don't like him because he's a successful millennial.
right. That's it.
Ayo.
Oh man. So what were the attitudes of the people you talked to towards the United States?
Let bygones be bygones, and they're willing to reach out and engage with the U.S. in exchange for the lessening of sanctions, and they want mutual understanding. They make it especially clear that they don't hate the American people, and they really go out of their way to try and show Americans the human side of Korea.
Another question I had related to that was, what are the attitudes of people? Oh, and then we'll come back to this in just a second. What are the attitudes of the people that you talk to towards the PRC?
I think they seem to think of it as a country with similar but also a very different culture. I mean, I think they recognize the role that China played in the Korean War, and they're like pretty grateful for that, and they're really friendly with Chinese people. Like for some reason, like they call like white people, Latinos, black people, etc. They call them foreigners, but then they don't call Chinese people foreigners for some reason. And well, I guess we do that in Chinese too, but I guess it's if you can't tell by looking at somebody that they're foreign, then they're not automatically a foreigner. But politically, my guides never really said too much to me, so I really don't know.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. So going back to something you mentioned a second ago, did you observe yourself like the impact of U.S. sanctions or anything that you could attribute to U.S. sanctions during any of your trips?
Oh, definitely.
Like what kind of things did you see?
The roads are like the highways. They're in bad shape. Like it's try to imagine like a five or 6 lane highway, and usually on those you drive straight, right? But like when our driver drove, he kind of had to like drive in like S shapes because there were like potholes everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's I think that's the major that's the biggest thing because like Korea's not too wide, but it took forever for us to get from Pyongyang to Hamhung because the roads are in such bad shape. That's the most obvious. And I think power supply is kind of obvious, but they've kind of overcome that with just like solar panel spamming.
Yeah.
Nice. Do they have like a pretty robust public transportation system?
Pyongyang has a subway. It's only on one side of Pyongyang. Pyongyang is divided into two with the Taedong River running down the middle, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
The subway's only on one side, and there's also there's like a trolley, and there are buses, and there's a lot of taxis. It's not like a really big subway system, but it exists, and it's really nice.
Awesome.
Outside of Pyongyang, I'm not too sure, but I mean, when I went to Rason, the place was small enough that it seemed feasible to just walk from place to place.
Sure.
China needs to help out with that high-speed rail, though.
Yeah.
President Xi.
President Xi, get on it.
Long-time friend.
Friend of the show, friend of the pod, President Xi. Okay. And so I don't know anything about what I'm about to ask, so that's why I'm asking you. What's the relationship between the ROC and the DPRK?
Well, the ROC stopped existing in 1949.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we all know that here, but like,
okay, the Taiwan authorities who still call themselves the ROC. Well, up until the early 2000s, the Taiwan authorities recognize bad Korea, ROK, as the sole legitimate government of all of Korea.
So they were on the same team, basically.
They refer to the north as Beihan rather than Chaoxian. And Beihan literally means northern Hanguo, and Hanguo is Chinese for it's the Chinese reading of the name for Korea that the South uses, which is Hanguk.
Yeah.
So the government on Taiwan recognizes the DPRK as a separate country from the ROK, but still refers to it basically as Northern ROK, which kind of annoys me, but okay,
Yeah.
I guess old habits die hard. And but under these circumstances, you can probably guess that most people in Taiwan don't know much about the DPRK, and that
Sure.
there isn't much dialogue between the Taiwan authorities and the DPRK. Because needless to say, the DPRK doesn't recognize the Taiwan authorities as a sovereign state. So they don't stamp our passports when we go in. But no matter what passport you use, they usually don't stamp them. If you go to Pyongyang, you get one of those blue visas that are separate from the passport. But when you go to Rasan, they do stamp passports, but they didn't stamp mine. So, yeah. And I guess you kind of want to know what the average people in Taiwan think of the DPRK.
Yeah,
Sure.
I guess everything I said above is kind of reflected by how the average people here see the DPRK. I mean, if you want to know what the average person here thinks, then just imagine how the average American views it. Because unfortunately, Taiwan is a great success story for the ideological domination by U.S. imperialists.
Yeah.
And the people here maintain a very Cold War-esque view of the countries that aren't on good terms with the U.S. I mean, there are exceptions here and there, but they're not going to be given a platform on mainstream media. And once my friend told me about how he was visiting his grandmother's hometown in the countryside, and he heard some young kids making fun of the DPRK for apparently not having food to eat. So. Yeah, and Mrs. Charlesworth's book did quite well here in Taiwan too. It got it's that video by William Whitman, who used to work at RT, how he had that video that debunked the defectors. Why did their stories fall apart? And they talk about so I added Chinese subtitles to that video and I posted it, and it kind of became semi-viral. There were I guess hundreds of thousands of views or more.
Nice.
And thousands of comments. And so many of them were whoa, this news source is from Russia. They're just as brainwashing as North Korea. And I'm this shit is public record.
Right.
God. You mentioned Mrs. Charlesworth there. This is someone you've had some
my good friend.
Twitter. You've had some Twitter interactions with. Can you explain her whole deal and that sort of
For those who don't know.
North Korea is an unimaginable country. For crime.
Yikes.
Watching a Bollywood movie.
They only have one TV channel.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Because there's at least 5.
Which was the U.S. till 30 years ago, basically.
I mean, even then, you still have 6 companies that run everything. And
exactly.
Not even six.
Yeah. It's
okay, well, something like that. But how many TV channels can you watch per day? I mean, it's
Right.
Yeah. How many do you need? Let's be real.
That's why I mean, North Koreans they go outside, they go and socialize. They don't need that many channels on TV. I explained the concept of Tinder to my guide, and he was like, "Wait, why can't you just go outside?"
Nice.
But, so on Park Yeon-mi, basically, she was a North Korean defector, and she sells sob stories to Western media, and she is funded by the Atlas Network through the Freedom Factory in South Korea. And the Atlas Network is responsible for pushing out things like climate change denial and all that stuff. It's a very
cool.
right-wing think tank.
Oh God.
And I mean, she gets paid a lot for her speeches. But the one problem is despite getting all that funding, despite having all of her money, she apparently can't afford to find a PR firm to keep her lies straight.
Right.
So I mean, she tells lies here and there. She said that people in North Korea are so kept in the dark that they don't know where Africa is.
Right.
So I posted a picture that I took at a children's summer camp. Like it was a mosaic of the world, and it had
It
Africa.
was just a big empty. Oh no, okay.
And it was like
a big empty space.
It was
there?
actually like the correct size of Africa, like and relative to the other continents and countries.
Not the Mercator
Mercator production. Faux.
Yeah. So
Western shit.
I posted that picture and I tagged her. I said lying. I need to stop reading Donald Trump's tweets because I feel like when I called her lying
Yes.
Pakyumi, I feel like I took that out of Donald Trump's book. But she is a liar.
Lying back on me.
Low energy pop.
I was like, lying Pakyumi said that
She's been
people
very
in North Korea
dishonest
don't
about
know,
the
blah, blah, blah,
DPRK.
blah, but how can you explain this? And then
Yeah.
she kind of deflected. She actually responded to my surprise, and she was like,
Oh,
well,
really?
if you think North Korea is so free and it's better than democracies, why don't you just move there? I'll be more than happy to buy you a ticket. And that's
Oh, and
another
that's
lie.
where-
Because
Still
I'm more
waiting.
than happy to take her ticket, but I responded. I bug her every few days.
She just won't
I don't
pay
know
up.
if this counts as harassment, but I mean, she made the offer. She made a promise, and then
She's got plenty.
she's
She's got
ignoring
plenty
me.
of money.
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like that's I don't that she's not setting a good example for her son. Like when she lies like that.
Exactly.
You know
That's a
what?
verbal.
Tell
that's
her
a
to
verbal
swear-
contract.
Tell her to swear on her father's grave.
Yikes.
one?
Yikes. Well, the thing that I love about like people saying, "Oh, North Koreans don't know where like Africa is," etc. Like, well, have you been to the USA? Have you asked people where they know certain countries
Right,
are?
right.
I've had literal people
The
talk to
country
me.
of Africa is
Call the country of Africa, but
Oh.
even like countries they've never heard of, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was a country." I was like, "Are you what?"
I mean,
What?
it's sort of
Like how
I mean,
did
it's-
Borat work? Like Borat only worked because nobody knew where Kazakhstan
Nobody knows
was.
exactly.
Which is crazy.
No,
to
I mean,
me,
and
yeah.
that's and there's sort of like a. I mean, I see this. I don't know if you'd call it a meme. Like I see the thing of like, oh, Americans don't even know where whatever country the U.S. is talking about bombing is. Like that's real though. Like
Yeah.
our geography is so fucking
Completely
terrible.
real. Yeah.
It's on liberal piece of shit John Oliver's TV show. He has like a running gag where he will talk about a country and be like, it's a country you're so unfamiliar with, you didn't even realize that wasn't this country, it was actually that country. And actually, you still don't realize that that's still not that country, it's this country. And like, he does it more than once. And of course, people don't immediately go, that's not such and such, but
Yeah,
that's- he
no,
does it.
yeah. So that is wild to point out. Like, oh, they don't know where like that Africa exists, like where Africa is. Like, yeah, most people in the U.S. don't know where like jack shit is.
I had a professor who didn't know where. Never mind. I'm not going to get into it.
We don't
but yeah.
even know where our own states are, so I don't know how we're gonna know.
I have trouble finding my house. So like,
Well, just use Google.
GPS.
You guys.
well, no, I know.
GPS.
No.
Get out of the house, Ethan.
I know.
Go outside.
I mean, I'm
Well,
more familiar with the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas map than I am with my own neighborhood. So that's kind of sad.
That's really dark.
Xiangyu just
Yeah, shit.
admitted to being a gamer.
Yikes!
That's
Straight
10
Everybody
years
plays
long.
Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Okay. All right, we gotta get this.
But
together.
I think another point I want to add to like the defector stories is, have you noticed when they're women, they always fit the Western like beauty standards. They're
Yes.
never like conventionally ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is true. There is but I think it's because there is an obsession with, like,
It plays into the whole white savior like
Yes.
fetishization thing.
but it's also like why, like, there are only certain types of like children who, when they're kidnapped, anyone gives a shit about, and it's
right.
when it's little pretty white girls.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone else, nothing happens. Like you like think about the big kidnapping stories in the world. You've got what was her name, Madeline McCann in
Oh, yeah.
Portugal. Elizabeth Smart. John Benet Ramsey. These are the only names anyone remembers because they were huge
like-
news stories.
yeah, so like blonde white girls.
Exactly,
Yeah.
little pretty white girls, and that is it.
It fits into a narrative.
It fits into a particular narrative of like who was a damsel in distress and who was not. So yes, they must be generally young and pretty in order for anyone to give a shit in the West.
But Park
Yeah.
Geun-hye is very ugly on the inside, so I don't know
Very
why people
much,
give a shit
yeah.
about her.
Yeah,
Snap.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true because Mr. Charlesworth.
Man, have you
a lot
seen
of shit.
have you seen a picture of that guy? Like,
Yes,
it's
I
so
have.
He
Their
looks
wedding
like
pics.
he looks
Yikes.
like the dude from Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk. He looks like Charlie Kirk.
Oh God. Okay.
Is his face that small?
Like with a name like Charlesworth, I mean, this sounds really mean of
Yeah.
me to say, but I feel that like I can imagine his family just referring to her as let's assume his name is let's give him a name, just a random name. Just can you think of one?
Jeff.
Fred.
Jacob.
Jacob.
I bet they refer to Park Geun-hye as Jacob's Oriental wife or something when they talk about her.
I almost guaranteed.
Yeah, almost guaranteed.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Big
Charlesworth.
yikes.
Big yikes.
That hits close to home.
Ugh,
So yeah,
gross.
gross. Nasty.
Okay. So our next segment is something that we haven't done for a while, but we call it Pull the Proles, where we have questions, and it's honestly just going to be similar to what we've done before. But these questions have come from people on our Discord server, which you can gain access to for $1 on Patreon. Yeah, but so I'm just gonna, Xiangyu, I'm just gonna ask you some more questions that that some of our listeners wanted us to ask you when they heard we were going to interview you. So let's see. So here's a nice personal one. So Nick Boone asked, how did you, Xiangyu, get involved in being a communist? Less about the DPRK and more about
Yeah.
you.
Oh, I was an econ major in college. And
Ew.
yeah, well, during that time, I was reading a lot on my own. I think I read stuff that wasn't related to my coursework more so than I read stuff for school. And I was also learning about U.S. imperialism and stuff like that. And then I just realized everything we're learning is very sanitized. Everything's just supposed to fall into place. There's the invisible hand, but not the visible gun. So then I started questioning things, and then I took a developmental econ course. It was taught by an Ethiopian dude, and so with developmental econ, we had to learn about the developmental experiences of various countries, and then one of them was China. And then on the last day, he was like, "So, do you guys think Deng Xiaoping was good, or do you think Mao was good?" And everyone said, "Well, Mao was terrible, and Deng Xiaoping single-handedly saved China." And he was like, "Well, look at what he privatized. The stuff that was privatized was the stuff that Mao built, or the stuff that was constructed under Mao." So he said, without the socialist construction in the first 30 years, like what was there to reform? And then he was like, why did multinational corporations seek Chinese workers? Because they were really educated for the price of their labor power. And where did they get this education from? He was like, most people were illiterate in China until Mao came along. So then people, I mean, all the liberals in my class were like, how could this scary guy say that Mao was so good? And then he was like, well, I think you guys should just do a little bit of more, do a little bit of investigation and don't jump to conclusions, because I like Mao. And he talked about how when he was a kid in Ethiopia and how his school didn't have books, he wrote letters to Mao asking for books.
Wow.
Did Mao send them?
I don't know.
No,
Might have been too busy beefing with Khrushchev.
Sad.
Youch.
No, yeah, but hey, yeah, no investigation, no right to speak. So, comrades.
That could be my story. How I became a communist. I mean,
Okay.
it's a long process. For the first time you read Marx in the Manifesto, it doesn't really make sense because it's kind of hard to, if you're a liberal, it's hard to understand like the differences between like bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeois, the proletariat, the lumpen, this, that, and the other. And then it's through just forcing myself and, okay, this might not make too much sense. Let me read Lenin first. Okay, I could go back and read Marx. Okay, this makes more sense. And then go to Mao and Stalin. And, yeah.
As I was leaving to come here today, my parents who were in town to visit the baby were like,
Oh yeah, Justin's back from paternity leave.
my parents were like, someday, Justin, you'll find the truth. And I said, I found the truth in the pages of the Communist Manifesto. State and Revolution and Das Kapital.
Did your mom cry again?
Probably.
I mean,
I walked out.
collateral.
Mic drop moment.
Bye.
Yikes. Hopefully.
I have a question for you, like as a parent, as a communist parent. It's how do you plan on talking to your kid
Plan on talking to your
when
kids
like
about communism?
when he or she becomes like like 12 or 13 and they start learning about like how evil Stalin was in school. If you don't mind me asking.
I have two 12-year-olds. I have one of my own and a stepson. And you start, as soon as they start learning history in school, you start, I ask them, every couple weeks, what are you learning in history now? And then if they'll tell me whatever topic they're learning, and then I'll give them, the truth. And so my kids are already, they're not communists, right? They can't read Das Kapital or they can't understand the labor theory or any of those kinds of things, but they are well aware of like the U.S. atrocities and the fact that like we fake history, in order to.
You don't have your kids reading like Grover Furr and like.
Not yet. As soon as they
Justin's oldest is forever like doodling hammers and sickles on
Yes,
things.
That's woke.
So you start really early, and then you just constantly, like I said, you ask them what are you learning, and then they'll tell you what did they tell you about this person. My daughter is 8, and they had to do a project on George Washington, and I was like, "Oh, you mean well-known slave owner George Washington who made dentures out of his slaves' teeth?" And so when you do that, eventually they like grow to doubt everything that they're taught in
Perfect.
history.
I asked this because wait, sorry, were you still going?
No, I mean, then they'll come to you and they'll ask you,
And-
like,
well,
"Hey, I
and-
learned this."
And Jeremy, you also.
I'm a little bit like
You also have.
I tend to like I'm a little bit less high pressure than Justin. So I don't, because I remember as a kid, the harder my parents pushed on me about anything, the less I was like, okay, I'm into that. You know what I mean? Because I was a little piece of shit. But so I tend to
Can confirm.
I tend to let them ask me questions and then I'll answer it. I don't usually like insert myself into that conversation without like being bidden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. And whether Justin or I are right or there is no right answer, I have no fucking clue. But they all know I'm a fucking communist. 'Cause
Right.
it's-
It goes
it's
a long
unavoidable.
way when you're teaching your kids.
Yeah.
Dad, why are you leaving again? I have to record my communist podcast.
I was asking that because part of why I became a communist, I guess it was easier for me to become a communist was I guess growing up as a minority in the US, you're used to hearing like two different narratives, or like, for example, you learn about like just very Eurocentric stuff as if it's like the beginning of history or whatever, and then you go home and you talk to your parents and they're like, "Oh, no." Or they have or they have a slightly different version of the story. That's when you realize how like even if like they weren't intentionally lying to you, which they are, things are a lot more complicated than they actually are. So
Yeah.
For sure.
I guess that makes things easier, but which I think it's really good that you're doing that with your kids, answering questions or asking about what they're learning in history and providing a different perspective. So at least they know that there is a different side of the story. So.
Do your kids know about like Justin and Jeremy? Do your kids know about like the DPRK and stuff?
Yeah, no, I've talked the older kids. My 8-year-old
sure.
doesn't have any
probably doesn't
concept
give a
of like
shit.
life outside of the U.S. But my older kids, they'll ask about it. They'll be like, I've heard that, because they'll go a lot, like Jeremy said, a lot of that is it happens.
Yeah.
Your kids come to you because they know that you feel differently. They'll be like, oh, I know, like Dad's talked about like the supreme leader Kim Jong-un before, and so when they hear something, they'll come and they'll be like, what are your feelings on this? Or like the other day, like my son was like, Dad, is Putin a comrade? And so, like, they come to me with any questions about any sort of,
Look.
look,
Hide her face. No, that's
Well, and I know that, like, one of the professors who I really looked up to, he did a lot about socializing, or not socializing, sociologically kind of analyzing media, and he even brought his daughter in, who was probably about 11, because he's taught her to be so critical of media, way more than any adult you've probably ever met. And I feel like that's so important, because most kids watch this shit and there's no dialogue about it.
Well, so there's
We could do a whole episode on this.
one of the people that I read that Hyder gave me the book of for my thesis was this guy Gregory Bateson, right? And he's got this like theoretical concept that he calls schismogenesis, which is like when two cultures come together, based on power dynamics, there is always one of, and I think he's got 4 different outcomes. Like there is equilibrium if they have equal power. If one is dominant in one thing and one is dominant in another, then it will likely be some sort of reciprocal thing, because this one over here might kill this one over here, but if they kill this one over here, they won't get the resources that whatever. Anyway, so he's got all these different things. He's like, but when he's describing it, he's like, culture contact isn't just between this nation and that nation, or this tribe and that tribe. It could even be extended to a parent and a child. And I'm like,
Oh shit.
100%.
right? Like you are enculturating your children when you raise
100%,
them, in the same way that if there was a dominant force that met a less powerful force, they would guide that culture's existence. That is the same thing you do to your child. So
my 6th grader, they had to do a project on like somebody I think is a hero, and he chose Lenin.
Wow, that's so amazing. God.
Wow. All right, so let's get back to questions for Xiangyu, because he is our
That's
guest.
Ethan telling us to shut the hell up.
No, I'm pulling a Justin and trying to like
Keep us on track.
here. Okay, so you still there?
Yeah.
He laughed and he was like,
All right. So K Kautsky Get Outsky asked,
God damn it.
what was the best food that you had while you were in the DPRK?
This will be very, what's that word? I'm forgetting English. Cliche. But probably their cold noodles,
Okay.
which I learned how to make.
Oh,
It's-
nice.
It's better than the cold noodles came from the north, even in South Korea, but just in the north, it just tastes better.
Okay.
I've had it in China as well, like in the northeast, like where most of the ethnic Koreans in China are, and yeah, it's better in the DPRK.
Nice.
I believe
Other
it.
than that, I think some of their like the food stands they have in the markets in Rason were really nice. I couldn't tell you what the stuff was. I just bought whatever they pushed on me.
I have a weird question. Is jjajangmyeon popular in the DPRK?
I don't think it's as popular. I didn't see it.
Because it's based on a Chinese dish.
Yeah, my grandfather sold it.
Yeah, but it's extremely popular in South Korea in the
Yeah.
ROK.
You know why?
Why?
Because I told you about the Chinese diaspora, right?
Yeah.
And they brought it over. It's a Chinese dish made with Korean ingredients by the Chinese diaspora there. And when Park Chung-hee became president, South Korea was very poor and they needed to do some wealth redistribution, but they're obviously not going to touch the compradors and the bourgeoisie, so they kind of fucked over the diaspora, and
Ouch.
they just passed a law saying that if you're a foreigner, and the only foreigner group that existed in large numbers was the Chinese community, you can't do business in these areas, and they happen to be Chinese dominated things. So then, what could they do after that? Well, they can just sell jjajangmyeon.
Okay.
Nice.
That's part of the reason why it's pretty common.
This is I love this because I love jjajangmyeon, and also learning the weird history of things.
Nice. Here's a fun question. So Comrade Jess asks, what is the media like there? Like, what are people watching? You mentioned that they have 5 channels, but what are on those channels? Like, what are the newspapers like? Radio, things like that.
Just pretty much stuff that's going on in their country and some international things. Like when I was there in Rason, the news was talking about Kim Jong-un's visit to Vietnam.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and the media, I mean, they'll have like reports on, for example, like some of their state enterprises, like what kind of stuff they're pushing out, what kind of vehicles they're making, this, that, and the other. But I didn't spend too much time watching the media, so I guess
Sure.
if you want to get a good idea, you can just go watch the streams of their TV channel. A lot of it is just like music videos. Like you turn on the
they got
TV
some
randomly,
bangers.
like 10 times out of like 6 times out of 10, it'll be some revolutionary music.
Beautiful.
Nice.
As well it should be.
That ties in with a question from Comrade Natalie, who did our previous, who was our guest for our previous DPRK episode, which listeners should check out if you haven't already. But she asked, what do you think about the various DPRK styles of music? Like, what kind of music did you encounter? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I listened to too much DPRK pop for my own good. But I think I really like the Pochombo electronic music group. And I like it's the style is like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like light electronic. It's
I'm into it.
I mean, I like their military songs, like their military choirs, like really good.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I mean, it's
Did they have like a rap scene there?
no, but I'm
Sad.
trying to push it a little bit.
Hell yeah.
But
Hell yeah.
It's finding the right way to do it because like like rap's been very co-opted by the capitalists.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then most of it's like pretty like counter-revolutionary, like just. It's not the stuff that you would want to show the DPRK people. You want to, like, keep in mind their sensitivities. But,
Yeah, of course.
I mean, if Fidel Castro can start a hip hop department in their Ministry of Culture, then I don't see why the DPRK can't.
You recorded a video there, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and I showed my tour guide this time, and he took out a USB cord, and he was like, "Hey, can you send it to my phone?"
Nice. That's how we all like came into contact with you. I think it was I can't remember.
You
what
had the
page.
episode on China.
Well, but there was like a some page shared that video, and it might have been like Michael Parenti's anti-imperialist posting or something.
Xiangyu's video?
Xiangyu's video from the DPRK, and I shared it on the Proles page, and you were like, thanks for sharing or whatever, and I was like, I love this shit, and then I showed it to like everybody else, and then I think you and Justin started talking on Twitter. So
Yes.
Nice.
that's how all this came together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, here's hoping that like soon a like sweet DPRK rap scene starts to like develop.
That'd be rad.
That'd be rad as hell.
Seeing them that there's revolutionary potential in hip hop. So I mean, if we showed them things like
You?
Low Key, like Immortal Technique, Dead Prez,
Yeah.
like that sort of stuff, eventually they'll be receptive. And I'm pretty sure, knowing them, like they're really good at making music. They're gonna come up with their own like particular style
Yeah.
or styles.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Rain asked, how are the parks?
In the DPRK,
Yeah. Just like
we're really clean.
clean. Cool. Are there a
Yeah.
lot of them or
Yeah,
just
and
like open
usually,
public spaces, plants?
Yeah. You'll find people like doing picnics and just hanging out. What they like to do when they're not working is they'll like drag a speaker around, and it might be hooked to a mic, and they just like to sing and dance.
Nice.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
people of all ages.
That's
awesome.
extremely wholesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Cool. Let's see. Millennial CEO asked, what is, I mean, this is sort of vague. What does being in a socialist society generally feel like? Like, what are the biggest differences that stand out? Like, how would you just describe being in a socialist country to someone who is from a capitalist country?
It's like having ad block in real life.
Nice. Wow.
I mean,
Ethan, stop.
I've been to Cuba before, and it feels very different from like the DPRK. So it's kind of hard to generalize it if you know what I mean. But
Sure.
in the DPRK, I mean, I think you can see that people there like genuinely care about one another. They're willing to help people out, and they're like they walk with their heads up, and I don't know, they just seem to be more complete people.
Well, and like if you come back to the whole thing that you mentioned about the fact that they've only got 5 TV channels because they actually go outside, like the reason that people in the capitalist world are obsessed with being online or watching TV or watching movies or playing video games is that they desperately want an escape, but not just an escape. They want to be able to control what's happening to them. And when you live in a capitalist society, because you're alienated from your labor and the product of your labor and all of that, you feel so detached from being able to control your life that you want to be able to just be like, oh God, okay, I need to focus on this one thing that I can decide what I'm going to watch, what I'm going to see, or if you're playing a video game, I'm going to control this person because I have control over what this person is doing in a way that I don't have control over my own life.
Another thing about going to a socialist country like the DPRK is if you understand the difference between production for profit and production for human need, you see things in a completely different light, and you can understand the optimism they have. In a capitalist country, when you see new apartment high-rises being built, it's pretty depressing knowing that many people won't be able to afford to live in them, and a lot of the units will be empty. But in the DPRK, when you see new housing complexes being built, it's pretty exciting because people are going to get better houses, and their overall standard of living is only going to rise. The idea of gentrification is just very alien.
Right. Sad. So Comrade Natalie again asked, did you bring back any souvenirs?
I brought back a newspaper from National Day.
Nice.
And I have a pen. They don't sell those pens to foreigners unless you make a donation, and they're kind of pricey, but my guide knows a guy who works at a factory that makes them, and that's how I got mine.
Amazing.
Our handler got a hold of your postcard because we still haven't gotten it.
Yeah, we still don't have your postcard.
Oh, nice. So it's already arrived?
No, we don't.
Oh, hasn't.
The CIA has it, I
We're
think.
pretty sure, that it got caught up by our...
Oh, no. It's
handlers.
it takes a long time. It takes at least a month, sometimes even longer.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. And then Comrade Adley again asked, oh, yeah, that's a good one. Like, was there anything that surprised you in particular when you visited, either time?
I don't know, because I feel like I did a lot of research before I went in.
I remember you said something about hipsters, DPRK hipsters.
Oh, that didn't surprise me. There's no hipsters or hippies, because this is what I realized. I think people in the capitalist world, they associate the existence of subcultures as the freedom to rebel.
Yeah.
But what do subcultures actually do? I mean, they don't really pose a threat to the existing order, but it's more of an escape. You, like you said, with video games or TV, it's something you want control of.
Tell that to Blink-182.
Well, yeah, I mean, Blink-182 is a perfect example of capitalists co-opting something. Like, for example, anything with revolutionary potential or content. Like, it's happened to hip hop for the most part.
Yeah.
It's happened to like punk music. I mean, you have like punk, you have things like Against All Authority or whatever, and then you have like Blink-182.
Sure.
It's by design.
Yep.
So I think
Anti-Flag is a great example of how the capitalists co-opted like literal revolution.
Yeah.
Revolutionary punk rock.
Yep.
Because
Anti-Flag is trash, and they were trash from the beginning, but they're literally like an anarchist.
it brings me to a point, because when you have subcultures, I mean, the thing about subcultures is you want to remove yourself from like the mainstream. You don't want to conform to the mainstream, but in the process of that, you're also seeking conformity with people you identify with, and there's this sort of comfort with conformity.
It's a pacification too.
It is, but
anything. Yeah. Sorry.
Wait, sorry. No, go on.
I was just saying it pacifies them rather than fomenting in anything that could actually change in revolution.
Yeah, but that same sort of comfort I feel is found in the DPRK when they do things like their mass stances or their group activities.
Yeah.
I don't want to say things there are perfect. They're obviously not, but people are in it together is the main thing.
And you mentioned the fact that like mass crying is not really a thing in the South anymore, but I think it's just become more personalized. Like massive, like at funerals, there is a tradition even in the South still of like the whole family crying, like as a whole. not on the level again that occurred when Kim Jong Il passed, but that I think it still goes on in the South.
Yeah, it's not like, but like I was thinking of when like their leaders died, like when Park Chung-hee died.
Sure.
I mean, people were crying. I was like watching the video the other day of like their mass crying. It was similar.
Yeah.
And like Park Chung-hee was nowhere near as popular with the people as Kim Jong-il was. I mean, he was quite popular with a lot of people because it happened to be when the miracle of the Han River happened, so people were, somewhat happy despite, the fascism that was kind of going on. But
sure.
Yeah, it's this sort of comfort and conformity, but also realizing like people there don't have to express themselves through their clothes or like, with things like that. It's just very hyper individualized in the capitalist world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you feel that you're being heard, when you feel that you're a member of the society, you don't feel the need to, become a hipster.
You mean you don't have to build an identity through commodities?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
Big if true. So I know we've seen like the picture of the bus stop or whatever, but like with the lack of advertising, in the DPRK, are those spaces typically used for art, or are they just blank?
Oh, they're used for art.
Yeah,
and it's not all propaganda like art. A lot of it's just like pretty paintings of like flowers or whatever.
Sure.
God, that
would be amazing.
That's so cool.
And like, another thing I want to share,
yeah, please,
is how like when we live in the capitalist world and we see advertisements everywhere, we're just kind of desensitized. We don't really acknowledge the fact that they're there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the first time I went to the DPRK it was for 8 days, and like by the fourth day or fifth day, the same kind of happens with their propaganda art, because it's just so common that you don't really pay it any mind. So when people are like, "Oh, it's like Big Brother, it's so scary," they're trying to like, okay, like honestly, most of the people there, like I guess they'll look at it when they're bored, but
sure,
it's just there. It's not like active like brainwashing like people make it out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know like a lot of the pictures I've seen of the DPRK, and you've pointed it out a couple times, but it's very clean. Is that like a running theme throughout all of your experiences, or does it differ?
No matter how like backwards or advanced the places in the DPRK, it's always very clean, because I think what they do is they'll have like I think residences are divided into like groups or squads or whatever. I don't really know how they call them. And then everyone's like responsible. Every like group of like people in the houses, they're responsible for like a certain area, like around where they live. So that's how they keep it clean. And they also have like these workers who kind of just, mow the lawns or like pick up or like pick the weeds and stuff like that. I think I saw, the leader of the KFA in the UK, Dermot Hudson.
No.
Yeah, he's like the KFA dude from there. I saw a post that he made about how when he was leaving Pyongyang one time, it was snowing really heavily and he was worried about delays. But then when he walked outside, he noticed just a bunch of civilians just shoveling the snow. So it's the same sort of system. It's the same sort of system they use for keeping their streets clean.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I got one last question, which is a little more logistical. Landlord Executioner asks, what are the logistics of traveling there like? Like, did you have to get a visa first, and once it's approved, then you like look for hotels? Or, I mean, I know you said you went with a group. Like, are there certain agencies that are better than others? What's the process there?
Okay, so whenever you travel to the DPRK, no matter what company you go through, those companies work with the KITC, which is the Korea International Travel Company. And if you're a tourist, if you set up a private tour, you can request certain hotels, like they're priced differently. Like my guide recently had a trip to Pyongyang, which it was a private tour. Like it was an old British couple who he said were just terrible rich assholes. But they stayed at the nicest hotel there. And I mean, you get to if you want a custom tour, you still have to have your two scary government minders, but you get to kind of coordinate things like where you want to go. But most people, that's really expensive. When most people go, they called Young Pioneers. Many of you have probably heard of it. So my advice to travel. So what you do is you look at their website and you look at a tour that you find covers the stuff you want to see, and it fits your budget. So you just shoot them an email, and then you express your interest, and they'll ask you for everything that they need, like passport pictures, like passport scans. They'll send you a few forms to fill out, and everything else is done on their end.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about a Proles DPRK trip.
It's expensive.
The cost is getting to China is really where
Right.
it trips us up because it's like $1,000 a ticket,
Yeah.
which is
over
absurd.
$1,000 per person to get to the PRC, and then from there we got to take a train from Shanghai to Pyongyang, and that was also like a couple $100, and then then it's the trip itself. So
We're still holding out hope for ProlesCon Far East.
It's definitely worth it. I think. How many people do you guys have, including friends who want to travel along?
I mean, we'd have like 6 or 7.
Yeah,
Six or
probably
seven? Might be enough for a small private tour. It's something you can work out. I also want to talk to KFA. It's more expensive with the KFA, but
yeah, I don't know. There's also the possibility of trying to do it as like a cultural exchange sort of thing.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned the KFA, because when you travel with people like YPT or Choreo Tours, it's done by the KITC. But if you go with from my understanding, when KFA goes, it's the people who take care of like cultural exchanges. Those agencies take care of like you guys instead of like KITC. So
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
regardless.
yeah, and what is the legality right now for people in the U.S.?
They're saying you can't go. The U.S. is
thing.
saying the U.S. cannot. U.S. citizens can't go.
Right.
The DPRK allows you guys to go,
I know.
Yeah, well, they do for sure.
but the U.S. doesn't allow it, and none of the tour companies are willing to take the risk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So at this
Because-
moment, it's
Thank
not
you,
gonna
Otto
happen.
Warm Beer.
Thank you, Otto Warm Beer.
fuck.
You fucking asshole. Yeah.
So, but for our listeners who are not in the U.S., definitely look into this if you get the chance. It sounds like a really cool experience. Yeah. So I guess to kind of bring it all, to kind of wrap it all up, what would you, I don't know, what were your big takeaways? Would you go back? What did you enjoy, your trip? What did you learn?
I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay.
And I think you can't really say you understand Korea unless
No, of
you've
course
been
not.
unless you've at least gone to both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I would definitely go again if I have the money. I'm kind of broke now because of my trips. But yeah, I want to go back after learning more Korean is the thing. I want to be able to
Sure.
talk to the locals in their own language, because it's different when you talk to them versus through a guide. And the thing is, the DPRK is changing very fast. I know some people who have gone in 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and they say Pyongyang is very different.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting to see the changes they're going through, especially now that they had their national defense is good, so they can start focusing on civilian economy and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Biggest takeaway is, I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot of my thoughts on.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I don't need you to have some little nuggets of wisdom for us to take away, but
Just
The DPRK is true Korea. That's
Okay, there we go.
all right, fair enough.
So talk for before we land this plane. Tell us about what you're working on right now, as far as your music and stuff.
Yeah, what do you got?
'Cause
What
I
do you
know
have to
you've been
plug for
considering
us?
doing an English album, which would be awesome.
Oh,
but
man.
also, I already love your shit, so I don't think
Sure.
it really matters.
Yeah, we've been passing around the album that you sent us, and it's full
I
thing.
ordered
Right now, I'm working on a either an EP or an album. It's probably going to be somewhere in that sort of limbo,
Yeah.
between an EP and an album. It's I'm working with a producer from the UK named Ransom Notes, the guy who produced.
Who did our intro?
Did our theme song?
Yeah. He's the producer of the song I did in the DPRK. So like my first album, I did all the beats except for one on my own, and this time I'm just gonna focus on like the lyrics and like rapping and leave the beat making to him. So
Nice.
I'm working on an album. It's called A Single Spark, or 星星之火, which is a reference to a Chinese idiom that Mao quoted once, saying like a single spark can light a prairie fire. 星星之火可以燎原. And I guess it's also a reference to Iskra from Russia when Lenin was there,
Nice.
before it kind of degenerated into a sort of social democrat newspaper. But then Pravda came along. But maybe Pravda will be my English album.
Nice.
I don't know.
Yes.
It's I think afterwards I'm thinking about making like an EP or something in English, just because I feel that like I think what you guys can take away from what I've said is leftist thought isn't very big in Taiwan. But there's a really, like when you talk about like cultural domination, here's the thing, like if somebody receives the respect of foreigners, like when I say foreigners, I really mean like Western Europe and the US, you get taken a lot more seriously by people in Taiwan. And right now I feel that there are more communists who in the English speaking world, which includes, places like India.
Yeah.
There's more people my messages resonate with, so I want to give that a shot and see what happens. Potentially. I've never rapped in English before. I don't know how good or bad it'll sound. If it sounds too bad, I guess I won't. We'll never see the light of day, but
I'm sure it'll be legit. So if people want to listen to your stuff, can they find links to that on Twitter or what?
Yeah, there are links. You can go on my YouTube.
Okay.
Which I think is linked on my Twitter.
Okay. Yeah.
And everything I release, I will definitely post on Twitter. You can find me on all the major streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music.
Okay, sweet. Cool. And we'll put a link to whatever your stuff is in the show notes. So awesome. Yeah, and I recommend even if you don't speak or understand Chinese, like his shit still
I wish
slaps.
I knew what any of the tracks were called so I could reference them, but fucking that album goes hard.
So,
if you go on Spotify, or Apple Music, I forgot which one, or on Bandcamp, they have English names.
Oh, do
nice.
they? Okay.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So we'll have to check that out. Awesome.
I like when I first found the video on Facebook or whatever. I tried to go to the website to order the album itself, and I was attempting to figure out what any of the buttons on any of the page did. I was like, this okay. I think that added it to the cart. All right.
I ordered directly through Bandcamp.
Yeah, I didn't.
But
I didn't
also-
realize that was a thing.
We gotta fucking learn Chinese, guys.
I know. It's true.
Well, thanks so much, Xiangyu, for coming on tonight. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll have some we'll link his music.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully we'll have an outro by him of something. Justin will edit this, so I'm sure he'll do something good. He always
Hell
does.
yeah.
So our sponsors are all of our excellent fans on Patreon, and we have a lot of them, and it's too many to if we had to read each one, this would literally take
There's
10
200
minutes.
something
Yeah,
people now.
it's a lot. So we're just gonna read the ones that we record, the new ones that we got since our last recording, which was last weekend. So we've got Aaron, Adam, Becky, Chris, Coffee Stasi,
Nice.
Dalim, Glenn, New Economic Plan Zig,
Nice.
Gonzalo, Harry, IC, what?
Gonzalo.
MLM, Principally M. Jeff, Kyle, Maya, Mark, Matthew, Michael, Nathan, other Nathan, what?
It's a lot for a week. That's
I
a
know.
little shocking.
No Zozo, Red Fascist,
God damn it.
Tanky McTankface, which is funny because that's Taylor's
That is.
username on Discord.
He quit the podcast.
And he's supporting us
become a
now.
Patron.
Taukir and Trent. All these people are absolute, just revolutionary icons, heroes of heroes of the revolution. They make it a lot easier for us to make this podcast for you because we can get like mics and mixers and all kinds of fun things. We want to thank Ransom Notes, who was mentioned in the episode, for our intro music. You can check him out on SoundCloud. Please don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps people find us. Visit prolespod.com. Like us on Facebook.com/prolespod and follow us on Twitter @prolespod. If you have any feedback, topic ideas, suggestions, you can feel free to send us an email at prolespod@gmail.com or in the comment box on our website. Thanks for tuning in.
And would it be appropriate for me to talk about some of the tours that are coming up this year in the DPRK?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do it.
Because I keep in contact with some of my guides.
Sweet.
And,
No, that's
like,
great.
the people there. So some of the unique tours that are coming up include the Korean study tour, where you get to live like an exchange student in Pyongyang for up to 4 weeks, and you get to travel on weekends. And you get to learn the northern dialect, which isn't something you'll get to do if you study in other countries. There is a Mount Paektu tour in July, and the word on the streets is that the mass games will be making a comeback this year, because before last year they hadn't been held for like 5 years. And if they do go on this year, it'll probably start around August and go on until the end of September or October. And there is a Pyongyang trade fair in May. There's a lot of stuff to choose from. So if Young Pioneers offers them, then I'm pretty sure Koryo Tours and all these other companies do as well. So yeah, feel free to take a look. And if you have the time and money, definitely worth it.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Solidarity forever.
Forever.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
I'll never apologize for the United States of America. Ever. I don't care what the facts are. I will lead her. I will do my level best to stand up for freedom and democracy around the world by keeping the United States of America strong and by keeping our eyes wide open.
老美常嫌我的国家不够世俗，老美却似乎忘记了他们曾经止住我国的圣战者，以阻挡人民民主党，是世纪禁止同为南土地改革等等主张，就因为他拉近得到邻国苏联的支持，在伊朗逝世的你们，害得我们的子子孙孙无法想象我们曾憧憬的日子，很多笑话还没听完事实就已经变成了史实，众人皆知苏联在1979年出兵阿富汗，可是你们依旧不愿承认，在那之前 CIA 都先勾结穆加赫丁，尽管他们捍卫那充满剥削的封建制度，反正地主们又不清楚你把苏军引入陷阱，再指着他们侵入我国的领土，今天的战场我要你听清楚，你所谓的自由民主，清楚了老百姓的幸福。
The name of today's military operation is Enduring Freedom. We defend not only our precious freedoms, but also the freedom of people everywhere to live and raise their children free from fear. I know many Americans feel fear today, and our government is taking strong precautions. All law enforcement and intelligence agencies are working aggressively.
上个世纪说是反共，这个世纪说是反恐，实际上你只在乎极少数人的繁荣，是谁暗中煽动反动分子颠覆他国的政权？哪个混蛋制造了混乱，导致塔利班的呈现？不用争辩，侵略我们是为了人权，为了就医，还是为了自然能源？阿富汗、位于土库曼和巴基斯坦之间有刺客建搞政变，根本是为了实现土阿巴印天然气管道的建设，牵扯911就轻易把平民给骗了，说盖达组织在阿富汗策划恐怖攻击，为何德国还西班牙州都没有被你空袭？你们的通病是把我们的人民当作统计，你们只同情自己的白种兄弟，所有被压迫的民族和我要你看清楚资本家的自由民主如何清除人民的幸福。
We do not seek to occupy other nations. We will not claim another nation's resources or target other peoples because their faith or ethnicity is different from ours. What we have fought for is a better future for our children and grandchildren, and we believe that their lives will be better if other people's children and grandchildren can live in freedom.
使用土制炸弹的人叫恐怖分子，开飞机就凭化油弹的人最可能升职。你们的政治决定全世界人民的生死，难道你还不懂我们为何跟你有争执？朝鲜的城市总统都被烧一弹烧毁，他们南方同胞还被送去越南做炮灰，遭受性暴力对待的美兰村民被在之后，老美不但没有悔改，还期望大家崇洋媚外。不论国内外，过去或未来，美国的财富根本极限于别人的痛苦悲哀。从前地到监狱，在黑人的眼里，美国梦仅是占人便宜的骗局。记不记得费城警察用炸弹残杀黑人，炸古巴航空飞机的又是谁支持的罪人？我说出这些事实，使之成为普遍知识之子。
The scourge of our planet today is a small group of rogue regimes that violate every principle on which the United Nations is based. If the righteous many do not confront the wicked few, then evil will triumph.
Yeah, we got two birds. We're still firing. Roger. Got him.
6 is a 2-6. We'll move, but we got this.
Oh, sorry. Well,
bypass.
God damn it, Kyle. Sorry. I hit him.